Today I'm sharing my 6x6 no scraps sketch set number 4, which allows you to make 8 A2 size cards from 4 6-inch sheets of paper. Hey, it's Beth. Welcome. Today I'm going to be finishing off my Welcome Home pad by Echo Park using my sketch set number 4, which is a no scraps template for 6x6 paper, and I'll be using the last 4 sheets of this pad to create 8 cards. I'm going to start by cutting down my 4 6x6 sheets that I've pulled out. This time I did pull out 2 sets of 2 papers, so like I have 2 patterns and I just have 2 sets. I did do off camera, I did do another round of these cards where I used 4 different sheets, so you'll be able to see how that comes out at the end as well. My sketch sets give you a cutting guide template as well as at least 1 card sketch, if not 2 card sketches, to use up an entire 6x6 sheet with no scraps. And I like to tell you on my guide how many sheets that you need and how many sheets or how many cards you're going to end up with. So I like to do this because a lot of times if you're just trying to finish off a partial pad that's in your stash and you have 6 sheets left, you can kind of look at these guides and know which ones you need to use or which ones that you can use right off to help you use up those 6 sheets pretty quickly. Because the goal is to help you use your paper efficiently and quickly and not have any scraps. And sometimes it's nice to just have like stress-free card making, like where somebody tells you what you're going to do, and I mean, you just do the fun stuff of adding the embellishments at the end. But I don't give you a cutting guide or template or anything for cardstock matting. I do let you know that if you do bring in cardstock matting, you're going to have scraps of the cardstock left over. So if you've watched my videos, I do try and give you tips here and there if you've used cardstock, how you might be able to use up some of the scraps you have from the cardstock. Today I will be bringing in cardstock for the Sketch B card, but for this first, the Sketch 4A card, I'm just going to be using the strips because they do pretty much cover the bulk of the card. At some point when I was trimming, somebody came in to talk to me while I was cutting, and I think I put some of my strips in the wrong pile. So I was trying to keep my 1 1/4 inch strips separate from my 1 3/8 inch strips. They are very close in size, but there is a slight difference. So here I'm kind of struggling to lay everything out because I feel like things got in the wrong pile. So just a tip that keep your different size strips in different piles if possible to make this part go much quicker. I have sped up this video 2 times. The real time was about 35 minutes, I think, from start to finish, and that includes my little indecision or indecisiveness on these, trying to figure out which, like how my strips got messed up and where they need to be. So one thing that this Sketch A, using these strips, you do cover up almost all of the real estate on the front of an A2 size card base. I cut down my own card bases using a guillotine trimmer, and I cut like at least 2 pieces at a time. And I have found that depending on where I slide my paper, like on the 5.5 inch mark, I always end up with 1 card base that's like just a hair under and 1 card base that's a hair over 5.5 inches tall. So lining them up on the card bases, lining these strips was a little bit tricky just because I had some where I had a lot of room left over and I'm like, oh, I can spread them out. And then the next one would be smaller and then I'd have to scrunch them in. So that is my personal struggle. I know a lot of you probably do a much better job at cutting your card bases. But I like to alternate the strips. So I will do one at like the 1 1/4 inch strip at the bottom, and then a 1 3/8 strip inch strip, and then a 1 1/4 inch, and then a 1 3/8. So I do one of the larger strips at the bottom and kind of alternate from there. You could do all of the same color if you want. I like to just alternate the colors as well as like the widths. If you were using 4 different patterns, you could put all 4 patterns on the same card if you want to just do one of each. So this is totally personal preference. Sometimes it probably depends on the paper and the patterns and how well they go together. But I will get all of these cards, all the strips put down on all 4 cards, and I kind of create my card bases and then come back and decorate them at the very end, and I kind of do the decorating in different styles or different steps as well. But this is my sketch set number 4. I have 3 other sketch sets out so far for 6x6 paper, so I will link a playlist in the description box below for you if you would like to check those out. One nice thing about the sketch sets is, you know, if you are a planner, or like I said, if you have a partial pad where you just need to use up 4 sheets, you can pull out one of these and know that with one cutting guide, you'll be able to use up all 4 sheets. So now that that one is done, I'm going to pull in the card bases and the pieces for the sketch 4B. Again, you can do all of the same pattern in these blocks, or you can mix and match. I have double-sided paper, so technically I could flip them over too, but I just liked the kind of like the white and the bluish gray combo. So I said I was going to pull in cardstock matte for this sketch, and so I'm bringing in a gray that I feel coordinates well with both of the colors. And I do have a note at the bottom of my sketch sheet that tells you that if you do want to cut a mat for this particular sketch, you can do a smaller mat at 3 1/4 by 4 1/4, which doesn't give you, which just gives you a thin border, or you could go up to 3 1/2 by 4 1/2, which is what I did here, and you can see the size border that you'll have. Or you could cover the whole card, just do a regular A2 size card mat. That's totally up to you. I do like how cardstock matting helps things pop, and it does kind of give it a cleaner look and look nicer, but sometimes I just don't want to mess with the scraps that are created from the cardstock mat, because I did have a lot of the gray scraps left. So again, personal preference, and a lot of times probably just depends on the projects and the papers that you're using. So I do this kind of in an assembly line process as well. I add all of my rectangle pieces to the card mat, and then, or to that rectangular mat, and then I add the mat to the front of the card. So if you do use cardstock for matting, some tips I've given so far: you can use some of that extra cardstock to go behind your sentiments or other embellishments that you have to add dimension. You can use some of the cardstock up on the inside of the cards along with any of the pattern paper scraps that you have. You can use the cardstock to create strips or shapes, like punch shapes out. Use it to further embellish the front of your cards. So on sketch 3, I used strips to embellish my cards a lot, and today I will show you at the end that I do use some of the gray scraps to punch some circles, just to add kind of like an enamel dot type embellishment on the cards. You can, depending on the cardstock you're using, you can use it to also stamp your sentiments. I use it in this case to mat my sentiments. I use some of the scraps I have left over to mat some of the sentiments that I think all the sentiments that I used. So there are ways, you just have to work a little harder to use up the cardstock mats as well. So on my final card, like I said, I think real time was just under 35 minutes to make 8 cards. I did make the other set on a different day, So like that, the second set is not included in this time, but they do go pretty quickly. And like I said, part of my time was just trying to figure out how to reorganize my strips so that I could get the right size strip in the right place that I wanted it. All right, we'll get this last mat on the card base. And so now all of our card bases are put together. There are 4 strips that you have left according to my cutting guide. And I'm just going to add these on to the inside of my Sketch A cards. You could cut them in half and use them on, that way you would have 8 pieces that you could use across the additional 4 cards as well. I have some strips and scraps left from another project that I did with this pad, and so I am going to pull in some of those for the other 4 cards that I have, because I had some scraps left of the same patterns. So I'm going to take the hang tag strip from the top on one of them, and I just cut it at an angle on either side of the little hanging tag hole, and I will put that on the inside of the cards. And then I also had a bigger strip left that I just cut down the middle lengthwise to create some strips as well. If you didn't, another option is to use some of those cardstock scraps that you have on the inside of these 4 cards. You can always add additional scraps that you have. You don't have to use just what I tell you, that you'll be able to use with the scraps you have left. So now I'm going to move on to adding my sentiments and embellishing. I have a bunch of sentiments. I just printed off like a couple sheets from my silhouette to just save myself some time. Plus I don't have any good, I only have like one Mother's Day and one Father's Day stamp. So I wanted to give myself some freedom. I wanted to be able to use like a rectangle, so I just kind of sized some of the sentiments I've got saved on my silhouette to be able to use squares and rectangles in addition to circles. So I'm using some of the leftover cardstock that I had left to create mats for those rectangular sentiments, just to help them stand out on the cards. And then there's one piece that I had left, and like a smaller scrap, and it didn't work, so I had to tap into a bigger scrap for this rectangular sentiment. And then I'll get to use some more of the bigger scraps to punch some circles for some of the circular sentiment mats. And this is just a 2-inch circle punch by EK Success. And then I ended up bringing in a 2 1/4 inch punch as well for one of the bigger sentiments. So as I'm adhering these sentiments to their mats and then to the cards themselves, again, you could add some of your leftover cardstock behind the sentiments here, like just cut some rectangles down to go behind your sentiments, and then you've got a little bit of dimension on your card as well. And I'm just using, I know some people ask why sometimes I use my tape runner and why sometimes I use my wet glue. It just depends on what I'm gluing down. For this, it was just quicker to use the wet glue, especially since I'm going to have to switch to the glue for my circles anyway. The sentiment shapes that I give you on each sketch are just a guide. You can use any shape you want. You can even, instead of a sentiment, you can put an embellishment there, add your sentiment in a different spot. These sketch sets are intended as a guide or a starting point, and you can make them as simple or as elaborate and detailed as you want. I'm just kind of giving you the basics to create a certain number of cards without any scraps each time. So switching, I'm now on that second set of cards, and I've kind of mixed it up. I used a square sentiment on one, circle sentiments on the others. So like I said, totally up to you what you want to do with that. And then after I get this last sentiment on, I decide that I want to add a little bit something extra to the Sketch A cards, kind of there at the bottom. I think they're fine as they are because there is enough pattern going on. But since I had some gray cardstock left, I brought in a small circle punch, also by UK Success, and just punched some circles out around where I had punched the bigger circles. And then I will use these as a flat enamel dot embellishments. Just add some glue at the bottom and then add my little punch circles right on top of the glue. And I just kind of keep them in a straight line as best I can. And I know like the gray on gray, the tone on these is kind of hard to see on camera, but in person it does at least give it a little bit of extra. It does add a little bit of dimension, and it just gives it a little bit extra touch. So you can bring in sequins, you can bring in enamel dots, you can bring in Love from Lizzie strips, you could bring in pops of color, glitter, any kind of glitter drops or enamel, just anything you wanted. You can add additional embellishments around your sentiment. All up to you. So now that all of my cards are done, I'm going to give you a final look here. This is the set I made with you. I did a mix of Mother's Day, Father's Day, thinking of you. And then the set I did off camera, I brought in 4 different sheets of pattern paper, and depending on the card, some I just used 2 of each pattern on a card, and in some of them I mixed up all 4 patterns. So I just wanted you to be able to see the difference of what they would look like. But hope you enjoyed sketch set number 4. If you did, it is linked in the description box below for you to check out. And if you do use this, please tag me on social media and use the hashtag BCCNoScraps. I thank you all so very much for your time and your support, and hope you all have a very wonderful day.